pregnant with 5 months along. I just secured a $300 million contract for my husband. Only to turn around and find him in the arms of his secretary, kissing. That secretary told me to get an abortion, divorce him, and leave. And my husband just stood there, agreeing. They even teamed up to smear my reputation, trying to make me leave with nothing. But what they didn't know was that I was no longer the poor, easily manipulated girl I once was. I quickly signed the divorce papers, then transferred the contract to my new husband's company. As for my ex-husband, who thought he could turn things around with his secretary's family fortune, he can wait. He and his little lover will soon be begging me. In the 8th year of our marriage, I was pregnant, securing another $300 million deal for Chris Gardner. And as soon as I got back to the office, I ran into him with his new secretary, hugging and kissing each other. I trembled as I questioned him, but all I got was the young girl's mocking laugh. Aren't you the poor student Chris Gardner sponsored? You look so out of place as Mrs. G.U. Now that he has me, you should go get an abortion, divorce, and leave. I slowly turned to Chris Gardner. And though he didn't speak, his lowered head made his stance clear. While no one was looking, I quickly stuffed the contract I had just signed back into my bag. And with a smile, I looked at him. Chris Gardner, after all these years as husband and wife, I just need you to say one thing. Are you daring enough to divorce me? I had married into the Gardner family when they were on the verge of bankruptcy, spending 8 years and countless days to help bring them back to life with the patents I'd secured. Even his parents treated me with respect. I thought Chris Gardner would understand the situation. Susan James, just let it go. Chris Gardner stared at his shoes and whispered 5 words. His voice low but laced with a hint of determination. Just then, I felt a sharp buzzing in my ears. A symptom that had been bothering me ever since I became pregnant. My belly suddenly began to move intensely. And I grabbed Chris Gardner's tie tightly. Are you serious? The baby's 5 months old, and you want to divorce me now? Chris Gardner said nothing, letting me pull at his tie. And my anger swelled. Whenever Chris Gardner faced problems, he always ran away and stayed silent. I was about to speak again when a sharp voice interrupted me. All right, enough with the tiger mom attitude. Chris Gardner is only being polite because of our marriage. When a man mentions divorce once, that's enough. If you have any dignity, pack your things and leave. Daisy Moore was someone who had asked me multiple times for help to get into the company. I didn't expect she'd cause me so much trouble. While I was planning to settle the score later, Daisy Moore stepped forward again, getting closer. Did you not hear me? A mountain girl like you. Why don't you know how to speak to your superior? Before Daisy Moore could finish her sentence, I slapped her across the face. This slap is to teach you how to speak to your superior, and this slap is to teach you how to speak to someone's wife. I raised my hand, ready to strike her again. But just as my hand was about to fall, a large hand grabbed my wrist tightly. Chris Gardner looked at me with a complicated expression. That's enough. Susan James, if you want to hit someone, hit me. It was my fault for letting Meng Meng get pregnant. She's still young, and I need to take responsibility. Suddenly, something seemed to choke in my throat. My anger and bitterness swirled in my chest. But not a single word could escape. Chris Gardner wasn't in good health. And for Daisy Moore to be pregnant in such a short time, it felt like part of a well-orchestrated plan. I suddenly remembered that Chris Gardner, who had always smoked, had quit not long ago. When I asked him about it, he lovingly wrapped his arms around me and whispered, Susan James, you're pregnant. For the sake of you, the baby, and our future, I must quit smoking. I thought this man had finally matured and was ready to take responsibility. Little did I know, he was quitting for Daisy Moore and to plan for a baby with her. My stomach churned, and I leaned against the wall, struggling to stop myself from vomiting. Chris Gardner rushed to support me, speaking cautiously next to me. Susan James, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'll give you time to calm down. But before Meng Meng has the baby, let's get the divorce done. You must understand, the baby can't grow up without a father. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the cold air, making my nausea worsen. And I pushed him away with all my strength. I forced a smile, staring at him coldly. What's there to wait for? Let's divorce now. I then turned my gaze to Daisy Moore's slightly swollen belly. Her baby can't grow up without a father, and neither can mine. Let's get this done quickly, so I can find a better father for my son. Chris Gardner's eyes flickered with an unknown emotion. Susan James, Chris Gardner, she's agreed. What are you still hesitating for? Hurry up and bring out the divorce papers. Daisy Moore pouted and interrupted Chris Gardner. taking the opportunity to hand me the printed divorce papers. I glanced at them and suddenly burst into laughter. Chris Gardner, not a single share of the company belongs to me? Susan James, the company originally belonged to the Gardner family. Besides, I sponsored you for 8 years while you were in school. By both reason and sentiment, the shares have nothing to do with you. I was grateful, or I wouldn't have married into the Gardner family when they were struggling. For 8 years, I gave them my patents for free. And 9 out of 10 of their clients came from my patents. Now, with the divorce, Chris Gardner expected me to leave with nothing. Susan James, if you really don't want it, I can give you some of my shares. No, I'll sign it. Let's get this over with. With the divorce, forget about Chris Gardner's shares. The Gardner family will soon become an empty shell. The last stroke of the word, gin, had barely left the pen when I heard Daisy Moore's mocking laughter beside me. I really don't know why you're still so smug at this point. A country woman with a child, after leaving Chris Gardner. I want to see how you survive. I'm not like Chris Gardner. I have my family's support. In less than a year, he'll become the richest man in the city. I suddenly stopped and gave Daisy Moore a sideways glance. I remembered she was somehow connected to some prominent family. But no matter how hard I tried to think, I couldn't remember which one. I threw the divorce papers on the table and turned to leave. Just as I stepped out the door, Chris Gardner called after me. Susan James, did you sign the $300 million contract you went out for today? I slowly turned to face Chris Gardner and smiled. I signed it, but I just sent a message to the client to cancel it. Chris Gardner, we're divorced now. I don't want to work for the Gardner family anymore. I hope you understand. Chris Gardner, who had been so submissive today, suddenly snapped. Susan James, do you have to be so ruthless? He gritted his teeth, angrily rebuking me, and grabbed his phone to call a client. As soon as the call connected, his face immediately transformed into a fake smile. Mr. Fu, hello. This is Chris Gardner from DeHong Technology. Chris Gardner? Who are you? I only recognize Susan James when it comes to DeHong. The next second, the phone was hung up without mercy. Chris Gardner called back, but it was rejected again and again. He slammed the phone on the floor, glaring at me through clenched teeth, shouting, Susan James, do you have any idea how important that $300 million deal is? It's almost our entire profit for this year. I spread my hands. I know. But what does that have to do with me? Daisy Moore hurriedly stepped forward, rubbing Chris Gardner's back while softly comforting him. Chris Gardner, don't worry, it's just a $300 million contract. Let me go back and talk to my grandfather. Not $300 million. Even $30 billion would be no problem. I smiled and turned to leave. But I could still hear Chris Gardner's resentful screams behind me. Susan James, divorce was the right choice. How did I never see that you're this kind of woman? Malicious and disgusting. As Chris Gardner's curses echoed, I called the person who had introduced Daisy Moore to the company. Wen Heng, what's the background of the girl you arranged to join us? Oh, she's the daughter of the barely surviving Morrison Enterprises. Her grandfather had begged you for 5 years but never managed to meet you. Now he's sending his granddaughter to get close to you and use your connections. She's eyeing your patents, thinking you can save the Gardner family and Ding family alike. Suddenly, my hazy memory became clear. At a few recent industry summits, there had indeed been a somewhat decent-looking young woman following that old man, always so deferential in front of me. I sneered inwardly. It turned out that Chris Gardner and Daisy Moore were both involved in a game of mutual exploitation. Interesting. I was telling Wen Heng about Daisy Moore's glorious background in his office when his assistant knocked nervously on the door. He carefully approached Wen Heng but was immediately pushed aside. There are no outsiders here. Just speak. The assistant cautiously stepped forward. Mr. Wen, our company is surrounded by reporters. What do they want? They're looking for Miss Susan James to give an explanation. Both Wen Heng and I pulled out our phones at the same time. When I saw the content on the screen, my heart sank like a heavy stone, falling straight to the bottom. Out of the 10 trending topics, 3 of them were about me, with titles blaring in red. Heartless. The Gardner family has supported this poor student for 8 years, only to be betrayed and privately cancel a $300 million contract out of personal anger. Mrs. Gu is betraying her husband and raising a young lover, and now she's pregnant. Susan James is born bad, and her marriage to the Gardner family was a well-crafted scam from the beginning. Messages from clients poured in one after another. Ms. Su, we hope you can explain the news that just broke, or we may reconsider working with Mr. Gu next quarter. Susan James, Let's pause our cooperation for now. Even strangers were sending hateful messages. Bitch. I'll curse you every time I see you on the road, shameless and ungrateful bastard. I curse your baby to be born a super mentally retarded child. I clenched my fist and slammed it onto the table. This was clearly Chris Gardner and Daisy Moore's masterpiece. I had just informed several clients about separating from the Gardner family, and this news exploded right after. They were trying to drive me to the brink. I grabbed my phone and was about to leave when Wen Heng grabbed me. Susan James, you're pregnant. Don't go out. Let me handle this. I pushed Wen Heng away. I had crawled out of hell, and these storms didn't scare me. As soon as I stepped outside, I understood why Wen Heng's assistant was so frantic. Besides reporters, there were some influential figures from Washington, D.C.'s business world standing outside. Among them was Chris Gardner's parents. Gu's mother spotted me from a distance and immediately flashed a smile as she walked toward me. The moment she saw me, she grabbed my hand. Jin, I don't know how things got to this point. It must be the $300 million deal causing trouble. Did we upset Mr. Fu? Gu's father also stepped forward, smiling. Yeah, you just canceled the deal we had agreed on, and of course, they're upset. Hurry up and apologize. Get the contract back, and maybe the reporters will leave. I slowly pushed Gu's mother's hand away and smiled. Auntie, Mr. Fu won't be upset. I just signed a contract with my friend's company. He's in a good mood now. I saw the color drain from the two elders' faces. A cold smile spread inside me. It seemed that they were also part of today's grand spectacle. I had worked so hard for the Gardner family all these years, only for my blood to feed a nest of ungrateful wolves. Gu's mother's face instantly changed. Susan James, what did you say? You signed a contract with Mr. Fu using your friend's company? You are the Gardner family's daughter-in-law. How could you turn against us like this? I met Gu's mother's gaze and pulled the signed divorce papers from my bag, thrusting them into her hand. I'm sorry, but I no longer have anything to do with the Gardner family. I pushed past Gu's mother, about to leave. But hundreds of reporters outside rushed toward me in a frenzy. I had dealt with reporters thousands of times over the years. I knew very well that saying too much now would only make things worse. I turned to head for the back door. Just then, a sharp, mocking voice called out from behind me. Oh, the usually dignified Ms. Su, what's going on today? You've been exposed, and now you're running away? Daisy Moore, holding onto Chris Gardner, walked up behind me. I ignored her completely, walking quickly toward the back door. But just after 2 steps, my wrist was grabbed tightly. Daisy Moore quickly stepped forward, raising her finger and pointing at me. I'm telling you, Susan James, don't think that the Gardner family won't survive without you. What's $300 million? Even $30 billion, $300 billion. It's all just a matter of words for me. Daisy Moore, Gu's mother kindly gave you an out, and you still don't know your place? Come over here and apologize to her, right now. Chris Gardner also chimed in. Susan James, what you did today was really too much. If you don't apologize to my mom properly, you're not leaving today. As things escalated, more and more people gathered outside, and I could see cars from our clients slowly pulling up. It seemed that Chris Gardner and Daisy Moore had really gone all out for today. As I looked outside, a sharp pain suddenly hit my head. Daisy Moore grabbed my hair and pulled me toward Gu's mother. In the struggle, I tripped and fell to the ground. And a reporter, unable to steady themselves, dropped their camera right on my abdomen. Then, the entire person collapsed on top of me. I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. And the next second, warm blood started to seep out from beneath me. Gu's mother, who had been standing in front of me, hesitated when she saw the blood. She knew better than anyone the importance of my role in the Gardner family, and was about to bend down to help me up. But Daisy Moore quickly interrupted. Auntie, you can't show mercy to people like this. Don't worry about the Gardner family's business. Leave it to me. I've already talked to my grandfather about that $30 billion deal. The money will be here soon. Gu's mother's eyes lit up when she heard Daisy Moore, and her attitude changed, becoming more haughty. Susan James, you're so much older, but still not as sensible as a young girl like Meng Meng. For the sake of our mother-daughter relationship, just apologize and bring those clients back. Let's just forget about today. Daisy Moore stepped forward, glancing at my blood-soaked clothes, whispering in my ear. Susan James, you're really a useless woman who can't even keep a man and child. Once my grandfather transfers that $30 billion to the Gardner family's account, your hard days will truly begin. I gritted my teeth and stood up, raising my hand to slap Daisy Moore across the face. Once your grandfather arrives, let's see who's really in for a tough time. Daisy Moore's eyes widened as she was about to speak. But suddenly, a deep, steady male voice rang out. Daisy Moore, the elderly voice, though frail, still had a piercing power to it. Everyone turned toward the source of the voice. An elderly man, with gray hair but still an air of dignity about him, walked forward. It was Daisy Moore's grandfather, the current chairman of the Ding family, David Morrison. The Ding family was once one of the prominent families in the capital, and in the business circles of Washington, D.C., their words could make people tremble. But since over a decade ago, David Morrison's only son, Ding Dao, who was also Daisy Moore's father, passed away in an accident. The old man was devastated, and the Ding family's business plummeted. Ding Dao only had one daughter, Daisy Moore, and he had originally hoped to find a capable son-in-law to take over the family business, which is why he never bothered to cultivate Daisy Moore's abilities. She grew up spoiled. Then that accident took Daisy Moore's parents, and the once retired David Morrison, who had planned to enjoy his later years, was forced to shoulder the burden of the Ding family once again. But after being away from business for so long, the old man had lost his sharp business sense, and as a result, the Ding family's business only worsened. Maintaining what they had now was no easy feat. 5 years ago, after I helped the Gardner family crawl out of their own struggles, David Morrison took notice of me. He sent dozens of invitations to meet every week. But at the time, my focus was entirely on the Gardner family, so I couldn't meet with him. In recent years, he must have been really desperate. So he used connections to reach out through Wen Heng. Although Daisy Moore wasn't very capable, she was young, lively, and maybe being around me would help her learn slowly. I hadn't expected that this unworthy granddaughter would end up in bed with Chris Gardner. When I told David Morrison, the elderly man was so furious he was hospitalized. I thought this matter would have to wait until David Morrison recovered. But unexpectedly, this strong old man came anyway. Grandfather, what are you doing here? You came just in time. There's a hillbilly bullying me. Come help me. Daisy Moore, holding her red face from my slap, rushed to David Morrison, seemingly unaware that her grandfather had been ill. David Morrison glanced at Daisy Moore's swollen cheek, about to speak, when Chris Gardner rushed in from behind, bowed deeply in front of David Morrison. Grandfather, hello, I am Chris Gardner. Young man, don't call me grandfather, I'm not familiar with you. Before Chris Gardner could finish, David Morrison interrupted him, and Chris Gardner's face turned pale as he looked embarrassed. Daisy Moore, standing next to him, clung to David Morrison's arm, pouting and acting coy. Grandfather, Chris Gardner is just showing respect. Don't be like this. She gave Chris Gardner a look. Don't rush. Let's deal with that country woman first. Daisy Moore pulled David Morrison's arm and led him toward me. Grandfather, that bitch slapped me. You need to stand up for me and slap her back. The crowd parted automatically to make way for David Morrison. Perhaps because Daisy Moore had mentioned the $30 billion deal. Even Chris Gardner's parents showed more respect when looking at David Morrison. The closer David Morrison got, the more triumphant Daisy Moore looked. She stepped forward and pointed a finger at me, her voice sharp. Susan James, I'm telling you, this is my grandfather. Today, he's here to back me up. You better kneel down and apologize now, you ungrateful wretch. Kneel. As Daisy Moore spoke, a calm male voice rang out from behind. With David Morrison's words, Daisy Moore grew even bolder. Did you hear that, Susan James? My grandfather says you should kneel. Daisy Moore, I'm talking to you. Kneel and apologize to Ms. Sue. David Morrison's words stunned everyone. But it was Daisy Moore who couldn't accept it. Since her father's death, this elderly man had pampered his granddaughter even more. Even though Ding's business had been in decline, he had still elevated Daisy Moore into the upper circles, letting her spend freely without any complaints. David Morrison, despite his age, had fought hard to help, willing to lower himself to beg me, a country girl, hoping to leave some family assets for Daisy Moore. But this spoiled granddaughter didn't understand her grandfather's struggles. Grandfather, what are you saying? Why should I kneel down? Didn't you see? It was that hillbilly who slapped my face. Now you won't stand up for me, and you want me to kneel? I think you're losing your mind. David Morrison, ignoring Daisy Moore, stepped past her and walked directly up to me. His eyes filled with a hint of guilt and caution. Ms. Sue, I'm sorry, it's my fault for not educating my child properly. I know what Meng Meng did was wrong. Don't worry, I've already bought her ticket. And I'll send her back to the United States tomorrow. She won't come back to destroy your family again. I apologize on her behalf, and I hope you and your husband will have a happy life ahead. David Morrison's words only made Daisy more upset, and she stepped forward to block him from me. Her voice now trembled with tears. Grandfather, what are you doing? Chris Gardner and I are true lovers. I want to be with him. That woman is just a hillbilly. How could she ever be good enough for Chris Gardner? Grandfather, what's going on with you? Why are you always siding with outsiders? If you keep this up, I'll leave with Chris Gardner and never come back. As soon as Daisy Moore finished speaking, David Morrison raised his hand, slapping her across the face. You little brat, I've spoiled you all these years. How dare you shamelessly talk about breaking up other people's families in front of everyone? Where is your upbringing? David Morrison, probably furious, didn't hold back with the slap. And in an instant, blood began to trickle from Daisy Moore's mouth. This pampered girl had never suffered such humiliation. And she immediately ran into Chris Gardner's arms, crying loudly. David Morrison, already feeling awkward, became even more guilty when Daisy Moore started her tantrum. Just as he was about to explain to me, Goo's mother stepped forward, glancing at me and then quickly putting on a smile for David Morrison. Old ding, look, we should talk things through. Why hit the child? Chris Gardner and Meng Meng are in love. Chris Gardner just divorced. So let them be together. They'll be a family. Goo's father also stepped forward, grabbing David Morrison's hand. Yes, old ding, don't be angry. Before Goo's father could finish, David Morrison violently shook his hand away. I'm sorry. Our Ding family won't accept a son-in-law who's had an affair. Daisy Moore is not a good girl, and she's not suitable for marriage at all. David Morrison's words were a blow to the Gardner family's pride. And Goo's father's face turned ashen, his hand frozen in midair as he tried to retract it several times. Goo's mother, seeing David Morrison's attitude, quickly turned to Chris Gardner, giving him a knowing glance. Even though he had ignored business matters up until now, he could see the situation clearly. He slowly pushed Daisy Moore away and bent down to whisper in her ear. Meng Meng, go apologize to your grandfather. You know, if you really bring the $30 billion deal to the Gardner family, my parents will definitely approve of our marriage. Daisy Moore, who had been pouting, suddenly brightened up upon hearing Chris Gardner's words. She wiped the tears from her cheek, nodded at him, and walked toward David Morrison. She took a deep breath, smoothing her clothes before speaking. Grandfather, I was wrong today. Please don't be angry. Seeing David Morrison's face soften a little, Daisy Moore linked arms with him, looking up with a sweet voice. Grandfather, I promised Mrs. Gu that I'd bring the Gardner family a $30 billion deal. Look, I'm admitting my mistake. Can you please settle this matter for the Gardner family first? David Morrison's expression instantly darkened again when he heard this. And he shoved Daisy Moore away, his voice hoarse and stern. Say that again. What deal? Daisy Moore, somewhat startled, quickly adjusted herself and stepped forward again. It's the $30 billion deal you mentioned a while ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it's with, so it might as well be with the Gardner family. I've been with them long enough to know they're good people, and everything will be fine with them. Goo's parents, who had been flattering Daisy Moore all this time, finally got the answer they were waiting for. They immediately stepped forward. Old ding, the child is right. If you give us the project, we'll take care of it. You know how reliable the Gardner family is in business. You can trust us. David Morrison suddenly smiled, slowly pointing at me and looking at Goo's parents. If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Sue has been handling the Gardner family's business all these years, right? Goo's mother's eyes flashed with embarrassment, and she was about to speak when David Morrison interrupted her. Enough. Meng Meng doesn't understand business. That $30 billion deal depends on Ms. Sue. Since she and the Gardner family are no longer involved, the project is no longer theirs. David Morrison's words left everyone stunned. Goo's father grabbed his hand in disbelief. What? What do you mean? You still depend on Susan James for the project? David Morrison, with disgust, shook him off. Of course, I sent Meng Meng to the Gardner family to get close to Ms. Sue. But this ungrateful girl ended up in bed with Chris Gardner. You are all blind and foolish. But I'm not. Without Ms. Sue, the Gardner family would have been nothing by now. With your outdated products and useless son, the Gardner family won't get back up for the next 30 years. Daisy Moore, clearly shocked, staggered forward. Grandfather, is what you just said true? Is the Ding family's project really going to depend on that countrywoman to succeed? Isn't our Ding family powerful? Aren't you capable? How come the fate of our family business is in the hands of a hillbilly? Slap. David Morrison slapped Daisy Moore across the face. A hillbilly? A country woman? Your great-grandfather was also a hillbilly who climbed out of the mountains. And your great-grandmother, the one who built up the Ding family, was the country woman you're talking about. Daisy Moore, I can't believe all these years of pampering you turned you into this. I'm so disappointed in you. If you're willing to repent, come back with me and behave. If not, then go wherever you want. From this day forward, I, David Morrison, no longer have a granddaughter like you. Daisy Moore clearly hadn't expected David Morrison to be so firm. For years, the Ding family had spoiled this young lady, and she had never faced such humiliation. With so many people watching, Daisy Moore's face turned even more furious. Stomping her feet, glaring at David Morrison as she shouted, "Fine, from now on, I, Daisy Moore, will no longer be part of the Ding family. If you don't want me, then I don't want you as my grandfather." David Morrison was clearly shocked by Daisy Moore's immature behavior. The years of labor had already drained him, and her words completely enraged him. His face turned ashen, and clutching his chest, he staggered toward the door, but collapsed on the floor before he could even reach it. Daisy Moore, seeing her grandfather faint, didn't care at all, and turned to grab Chris Gardner's hand, burying herself in his arms. "Chris Gardner, you're all I have now. You need to love me well, understand?" Just as she finished speaking, Chris Gardner shoved her away from him. And when he looked at her again, all the tenderness had turned into disgust. "Daisy Moore, I can't believe it. From the beginning, you've just been calculating. Love you? What is there to love about you? A brain as dumb as a pig's and a family that's broke? I'm telling you, I was just playing with you. I've always loved only Susan James." Chris Gardner's words left Daisy Moore frozen in place. Tears instantly filled her eyes. Daisy Moore took a step forward, glaring with bloodshot eyes, and demanded, "Chris Gardner, you said just yesterday that after you divorced Susan James, you'd marry me. We already chose the wedding venue and even picked a name for the baby. You promised me you'd love me forever. Why the sudden change?" Before Daisy Moore could finish, Chris Gardner slapped her across the face. "Daisy Moore, are you ever going to stop? Hurry up and leave. Stop being so annoying." After saying that, before Daisy Moore could respond, Chris Gardner sprinted toward me. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. I had imagined countless endings for me and Chris Gardner. Either growing old together or parting ways peacefully. But never in a million years did I expect it to end like this, with such a dramatic scene. "Susan James, I'm sorry, I was deceived by that bitch Daisy Moore. I'm a beast. Please, forgive me this time, okay?" Chris Gardner's parents, seeing this, immediately stepped forward. Goo's mother grabbed my hand, her previous arrogance gone. Jin, I shouldn't have acted that way earlier. Please, be the bigger person. Once we get home, your father and I will apologize properly." Seeing me remain silent, Goo's father smiled and stepped forward. "Susan James, if you're still upset, your mother and I can apologize right here." I kept the same calm smile on my face. Stepping back a little, looking at the Gardner family members still smiling at me. "I've said it before, I no longer have anything to do with the Gardner family." "How can that be? Your mother already tore up the divorce papers. I've already married someone else." I interrupted Goo's mother, pulling out a fresh marriage certificate from my bag and placing it in front of them. I had to thank Chris Gardner for this. Half a year ago, he told me about a project abroad that required the bidder to be single. He mentioned it while I was busy with the company's listing. And I had completely forgotten about it until I went to finalize the divorce yesterday. I found the divorce papers just sitting at home. Goo's mother grabbed the marriage certificate, her face turning pale instantly. "Susan James, when did you divorce Chris Gardner?" 6 months ago. Chris Gardner said there was a technology project in the United States, and the bid required the bidder to be single. Just as I finished speaking, a loud burst of laughter filled the room. But I knew, this time, not a single person was laughing at me. Seizing the moment when Goo's mother was stunned, I snatched the marriage certificate from her hands and shoved it in front of hundreds of cameras. "If you want to ask me something, I'm sure you've got your answers already. Let me add a little more to your news. I, Susan James, have remarried." Countless flashes went off, casting a stark contrast to the now pale faces of the Gardner family. And I could hear endless discussions from the crowd. "Her new husband's name is Wen Heng? Isn't that the president of Wenjin Technology? Wow, they really are a perfect match." Amid the noise, my phone rang. Wen Heng's voice came slowly from the other side. "Mrs. Wen," calm and collected, even in the face of crisis. Impressive.